Welcome to The Slash, the horror channel where you can always find new ways to expand your horror index. I'm that encyclopedia of slasher knowledge Zero, and right now it's time for a review of Scream 6, released just 5 days ago on March 10th. Scream 6 was announced just a month after its highly acclaimed predecessor, Scream 2022, slashed its way into theaters and smashed box offices everywhere. With how successful that movie became during its run in theaters, and with some people considering it the best of the Scream sequels, it should have been no surprise that a sixth entry would be greenlit shortly after. While the ending of the last movie didn't exactly set up for a sequel, Radio Silence has made it very clear that they love this franchise and want to honor Wes as long as they're able to. Whereas Scream 2022 was mostly a modern rehashing of the 1996 original and shares a lot of the same tropes since it's essentially a love letter to Wes and the franchise as a whole, Scream 6 completely ditches the familiarity so present in the last 5 movies and takes a fresh, brand new direction with a unique and interesting feel that subverts all expectations and lets viewers know that this franchise, it can still be fresh and outside of the box 27 years later. Did the efforts pay off? In my opinion, abso-fucking-lutely. Scream 6 is definitely what I consider the best Scream movie since the original. It's such a breath of fresh air into a franchise that many people believed was going stale, and it completely owns with pride the fact that it's nothing like the others. While I do think that some aspects of the movie could have used a few bigger swings, I overall have no hesitation saying that Scream 6 is nearly a near perfect Scream movie that's definitely going to be the one that people remember the most, besides the original. It basically takes everything from Scream 5 and expands upon it in fresh, brutal, and exciting ways that gives everybody the rush of adrenaline and nostalgia they're looking for. The characters in this movie, both old and new, are used to much greater effect than those of Yester Scream. Whereas some of the characters in the last movie felt wasted or underutilized, everybody gets a decent amount of screen time here. The core four, aka Sam Carpenter, Tara Carpenter, Chad Meeks Martin, and Mindy Meeks Martin, are all fantastic together, both together and apart. When they're together, they're making you feel something with their heartfelt and sometimes emotional conversations, or making you smile with their witty and wholesome banter, and when they're apart, they're all shining in their own amazing ways. For anybody who dislikes Sam in the last movie, I can almost promise you she'll change your mind in this movie. Melissa Barrera as Samantha Carpenter gives such an outstanding performance as the overprotective and blunt but well-meaning and caring big sister to Jenna Ortega's Tara Carpenter. I like Sam in the last movie, but in this movie, she's such an unaffected badass who doesn't take shit from anybody, not even Ghostface. I sincerely hope her performance doesn't get overlooked in this movie like it did in the last one. She's wonderful, as are the other 3 members of the core 4, but I have to give even more credit to Mason Gooding as Chad Meeks Martin. I love the funny, flamboyant jock he was in the last movie, but in this one, he actually gets to shine as a more experienced, interesting, and well-developed character who you can tell will stop at nothing to protect the ones he loves, especially Tara. Out of all the characters from the last movie, I was most excited to see him come back and let his talent shine once more. The new characters are awesome and better utilized too. I love Jack Champion as the awkward and nerdy Ethan, who is pretty creepy at times, but you know he means nothing but well in the end. This entry definitely has way more interesting and better utilized characters than the last one, and I can say that for almost all of them, even the ones that weren't on screen as long. Also, Kirby's back, bitches. That is an immediate score raiser because Hayden Panettiere is fucking awesome in this movie, just like she was in Scream 4, to nobody's surprise. While it's definitely understandable that everybody was skeptical of the new setting, with this movie taking place in the Big Apple or New York City, watching this movie made me realize that New York City is the perfect setting for a Scream movie. While Woodsboro and Ohio and Los Angeles were perfect for the feel of each of those movies we're trying to emulate, New York City is the exact type of setting that this Ghostface needs. Wide open, fast-paced, and full of careless people who would never even notice if something happened to you. It makes sense because this Ghostface is without a doubt the most brutal and ruthless one of the franchise, delivering some insanely gory kills for a Scream entry. We're talking blood splattering everywhere, innards showing, being stabbed in places that would hurt more than others, and not to mention, Ghostface is exceptionally knife happy this time around. If you thought Amber Freeman loved to stab, just wait until you see this Ghostface. The New York City setting also delivers some creative and suspenseful set pieces that really add life to the setting and make it feel like New York City, since this movie was filmed in Montreal. The crowdedness and surrounding areas of the setting feel so authentic to the city feel, and there's just so much to admire about each scene. That also probably more or less adds to how scary this movie is. While Scream 6 occasionally has a couple lines that'll make you laugh or smile, it's not nearly as funny as Scream 5. In fact, the movie really capitalizes the age in horror and delivers some incredibly dark and sinister moments full of nail-biting tension that'll keep you on the edge of your theater seat, unless you have recliners, and make you want to scream. I'm not even kidding, this may be the scariest one since the original. I don't know if that's because of the fun chase scenes, the more unhinged nature of Ghostface, suspenseful scenes full of unpredictable outcomes, but Radio Silence actually made Scream 6 a capital H horror movie and left out some comedic elements, which I'm honestly fine with. That's about all I have to say as far as spoiler-free stuff goes, which means we are now officially diving into spoiler territory. If you have not seen Scream 6, I recommend clicking off the video now and coming back once you've seen it, since this is definitely a movie you don't want to go into spoiled, but if you have seen it, stick around and see if you agree. I actually don't mind Sydney not being in this movie at all. Her being in it would have served little to no purpose, since she wasn't involved with the character death this movie is ultimately centered around, and that's Richie Kirsch, the mastermind of the events of Scream 5. The killers, who were revealed to be not one, not two, but three people, Detective Bailey, Ethan Landry, and Quinn Kirsch, reveal that the motive once again is just good old-fashioned revenge. Richie was a part of their family, and they want to avenge him by killing Sam and capitalizing off the theories online that he was innocent. I personally think this was a really awesome way to work Richie into the movie, since we get to see more Jack Quaid, and we get more exposition on his backstory and how big of a stab fan he really was. Though, I find it kind of odd how Richie never once mentioned any of them during the events of last year, but oh well, doesn't affect my enjoyment of this movie. I also really like all three of the killers, oddly enough. Dermot Mulroney as the unhinged and mourning dad of Richie is really good, and I like that he's just more overpowered by grief than he is psychotic, since the psychosis is left to his two kids, Ethan and Quinn. Jack Champion as the shy gone deranged Ethan Landry is fucking awesome and is one of the best killer performances of the franchise, in my opinion. Liana Liberato as Quinn works well as a more silently angry type, and I love how much of a fight she puts up with Sam and Tara at the end, even if her death is kinda lame. That, my friends, is called dedication. Now, I have pretty much been praising the hell out of this movie for 10 pages worth of scripting, so you're probably wondering, do I have any gripes with this movie? And yeah, I have a couple that may or may not just be nitpicks, but I'll let you decide. Like I said in the beginning, I do think this movie could have taken a couple bigger swings. Gale and the members of the Core 4 do end up surviving the movie, but they're all basically brought to the brink of death, especially Chad and Gale. I don't entirely like that they did the Chad fake out again, and while I am happy he lives since Chad is one of my favorite characters, I think they should have gone that extra mile and killed him or Gale off. Killing Gale off would have been such a big risk, but it would have been a great way for her to go out since she's basically spent the last 5 movies avoiding death on a technicality. Also, I don't really understand how Chad lived exactly since he was stabbed at least 30 times by 2 different ghost faces at the same time. Yeah, he was just stabbed in non-vital organs in his chest, but that would have been a ton of blood loss. Obviously they weren't going to kill Sam off, but if they had killed off literally any of the other Core 4 members, that would have been a whole other subversion of expectations. Speaking of Gale, I think having her in this movie was entirely unnecessary. Obviously it makes sense for her to be in New York City since she moved there after the events of 5, but she didn't really need to be in the movie just as much as Sydney didn't really need to be. She's pretty much there just to have the remaining legacy survivor in the movie, since Dewey is dead and Sydney is off the grid, so it would have been nice if they had actually given her a little bit more to do. It is only mentioned through an offhand comment that she survived her attack, and then we never see her again after that. I think it was just a rushed attempt to get the movie to the 3rd act without having to add more minutes to the screen time, and like a few other things in this movie, it definitely felt pretty rushed. Honestly, besides those 2 things, I really am having trouble thinking of anything else I disliked about this movie. Maybe a few tiny things that I could get into another time, but for now, I highly consider the Scream 6 the best Scream movie since the original, and I highly recommend all of you to go watch it if you haven't already. I am giving it a rewatch tomorrow, so maybe some of my opinions will change, but for now, Scream 6 fucking rules. It's fun, fast-paced, dark, gory, full of necessary fan service, and overall just a damn good time. I didn't think Radio Silence would have been able to outdo 5, but alas, they outdid 5. Scream 6 gets a strong rating of 8 out of 10. Before I end this video, if there is anything I missed that you would like me to touch base on, let me know in the comments. I know there were a few things I didn't talk about, so start up a conversation with me if you please. Scream 7 has already been greenlit, so when it comes out, you already know I'll be watching and reviewing it. Thanks for watching, and until the next one, my name is Zero, and this has been The Slash.